something we're going to be a part of, and we want to get with them. And how cool is this that they're in Silver Spring? They're right here in Maryland.
I wondered about that when
Yeah. So I called, we got that first diagnosis phone call with Dina Hook, who spent, I'm sure, way too long on the phone with us because we had a million questions.
Oh, she's the best. Oh my God.
Yes,
I think
she's such a wonderful resource. And then we were connected with Kari and the rest of the crew, and they were so gracious and wonderful to say, you guys live here in Maryland. And I don't remember if they just offered or we asked, or it was a combination of the two. We went into the office and we met with everybody. And they actually went into the conference room and greeted us with open arms and a little care package gift bag, and wanted to talk with us and embrace us and hear our story and hear what had happened so far. And then we all said we want to be, that took a little while. It wasn't like the next day. It took a little while for that to happen. But once we met them and saw the group and learned about the organization and what they were doing, we just right then and there decided we have two different paths, and anybody can choose these two, and neither one is right or wrong. Some people choose all of this completely, and I respect it, private and to themselves, and that's how they choose to, they take that path. And for us, we decided, we just felt like a calling to need to take the other path because we had this medical background. We didn't feel like there was enough, obviously, awareness and not a cure. So what was the only thing we could do was to be advocates and volunteers and fundraisers and a voice for Brynleigh until she can have her own. And that's we just never looked back and just went running down that path. That's the way we chose to go when we went to that fork in the road kind of.
That's great. Just the way you laid it out is a really good description of the decision tree that goes into how you get involved.
Absolutely.
And like you said, no one way is right, and there's all kinds of different ways to do it. So that was it. You were off and running. And as far as Brynleigh, tell me a little bit more about, did you get on top of the seizures? Or do you want to spend a few minutes? We don't need to go through every detail, but go for it.
No, because you know how long that journey and the road can be to getting your first couple years, I think, are usually some of the hardest.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people I'm talking to, we get through like the first 2 years and we're jumping.
Yeah.
So
it really is. I think looking back now, I tell parents, that during that time, you might feel lonely. You might feel depths of despair. You might feel moments where you feel totally helpless or hopeless. Like I remember days where Brynleigh just, unfortunately for her, she would try a seizure med and we'd have that honeymoon and then we'd go right back and clustering and worse. And we tried many different.
Frustrating.
Yeah, we tried many different seizure medications for her, one of which she had a full body rash reaction to.
That's my daughter she'd be on a med and then she'd get a rash. And then we have to switch it. Until the diet. So
Lamictal was bad for Brynleigh, and she did try many other medications, but we just kept noticing with her that it was short periods of seeing any kind of seizure control, if any, and then just going right back to the clustering and getting worse and longer and stronger. And for Brynleigh, it just seemed when they got really bad, then it was just seizures on and off throughout the day and her being frustrated and then getting tired after them. And it felt like Groundhog Day. It literally, Jill, it felt like being in the movie Groundhog Day, where every day you're waking up and doing the same thing. And meanwhile, you're trying to navigate the calls to the insurance, the calls to set the appointments, the calls to figure out where are we going to go next? What are we going to try next? How are we going to get out of this?
How are we going to make this stop, please, now?
How do we make this stop? So we decided that after, I think, about 5 medications for her, they said she really seems to have intractable epilepsy. These medications don't seem to be working for her, and you may want to start to figure out if she's a surgical candidate. And the interesting thing about that is, so years prior, I had SVT, a heart issue that required a laser ablation surgery.
Really?
And so Sean and I decide, again, with our medical caps that we shouldn't always wear, we started Googling one night about, because Sean said, if they did this on your heart, why couldn't they do this for the tubers in the brain? And
we knew it's a logical conclusion. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we knew that people were having resection surgeries and that obviously TSC kids were having surgeries, but we were just curious that, do they do this? And that's where we actually found Dr. Curry at Texas Children's Hospital, and that he did have the Visualase laser ablation technology, and he was doing this procedure, and he was having really great outcomes. And so we did try the many different medications, and we went and got a couple different opinions, and then, long story short, it led us to going to Cincinnati Children's, where they agreed Brynleigh really does need to be seen for surgical evaluation, and we did all those pre-surgical tests. They found that her worst cluster of tubers that were causing the majority of her issues were in her left temporal lobe.
Okay.
And so in the fall of 2016, we went to Texas Children's Hospital with Dr. Curry, and Dr. Weiner had just joined their team, so we did get to conference with him as well. And the epileptologist is Dr. Korg. I mean, all of them, they are the dream team of TSC surgical intervention, in our opinion. And we've sent and referred a lot of families there. We really have over the years, because I like to help families that are along that path, because that's
I think it's really helpful. I see a lot of posts in the TS mommies for doctor recommendations. I love that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and just the fear of the unknown. It's a huge thing to go from, I'm going to give my child seizure medications to, we're going to do brain surgery. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big shift. But I think you get to a point of desperation where we felt like we were giving her her best chance. And I know that I always cried, even for MRIs and things. I would hand her over and be tearful and worried and anxious. And I do remember that there was such a sense of peace and calm that just came over me. But when we handed her over to the surgeons that day, I remember my mom came with us. My husband and I were there. We were gone from our home for weeks. And I just remember when we handed her over, I'm like, we are giving her her very best chance. And we felt so, I mean, of course we were terrified. Well, no, but
I can relate. Because that's where you were.
We had fought this battle for so long and had this Groundhog Day and all these other things that weren't working, and just feeling like we were trying to find the answer. And we just felt like this was giving her her best chance, and that we had done absolutely everything.
Yes, I remember that.
Everything.
And yes. I hadn't thought of it, but I did hold on to that, when I realized that my oldest was going to need brain surgery, remembering just, we've tried everything. And we had Dr. Teal, who very similarly is, just great connector and just
amazing.
Yeah, always reassuring, like you said, you hand it over. But that moment where you're letting go of them to go to brain surgery, that's a tough one. So,
And the reason why we were and obviously the team the thing we loved about the approach there, we needed them to look at Brynleigh and figure out, we didn't know, was laser ablation going to be the right choice for her? Was a complete resection surgery? The thing we liked about being with their team there is we wanted them to look at everything, all the tests, all the opinions, every piece of data, and tell us and guide us and help us. Is she a candidate, and which procedure is she a candidate for? Because they're obviously the ones that are the experts and have done this surgery so many times, but we felt like we were in the best hands with whichever option they said was the right one for us. And so she had, she went in on a Tuesday, had the depth electrodes placed. They placed 10. They brought her back into the special ICU recovery area with those depth electrodes in, and she had over 25 seizures in the first 24 hours. And they came in and said, oh yeah, I mean, she's doing a great job. I mean, here you're praying for seizures to happen after you've always prayed for them.
Isn't it ironic?
Stop.
Yeah.
And they said, well, she's done a really good job, and you're okay, girl. You don't need to do any more. We've gotten all the data we needed. And they came back in and told us that it confirmed that it was that left temporal area. And then they went back in that Friday, and Dr. Curry was able to approach it with the laser ablation technique, where they actually use a Visualaze system, and it's a laser guided MRI plus the laser ablation technique of actually burning. They're burning actually the tubers, and then they actually absorb. They kind of turn to liquid almost and liquefy and absorb back into the body. It's crazy.
I haven't heard an explanation of it till now. So interesting. It's fascinating.
It's an alternative technique to
the resection.
Again, the resection, and every situation, is going to be different. But we thought, they always said, well, hey, if for any reason this doesn't work, we can always go back in and do the resection at another time. So that procedure does have a shorter hospital stay. It's less invasive because there's small, tiny holes being drilled versus completely opening up the skull.
Right.
And it's a much faster recovery too, because it's the small holes versus taking open the brain and the skull. So
I'm glad you pointed that out. I see posts, people asking how long is the recovery? So, it depends on the type of surgery that was done.
Yes. So we had to stay a week, and then we did her post-op check and they let us come home, and then they still follow our case, and then we still go annually to Cincinnati Children's to be checked and do all her annual testing. Her major seizures, the worst ones that we saw the last of them the day, October 16th.
Oh, awesome.
October 14th was the day that she had that surgery. And that weekend, that was the last we saw of those worst ones. We have seen some breakthroughs and other random things, but the surgery was life-changing for us. It was a miracle in that perspective. And we know nothing's given, the future is unknown. And we know that people even have to go for additional surgeries and other interventions, but even just to get a reprieve from that day in and day out, minute to minute, hour to hour was life-changing. It really was life-changing.
And you acknowledge that and just hold on to that hope. I mean, It's really hard not to. And no matter, two of my kids they've all had seizures in their older years after long periods of being seizure free. And, that was one of my biggest fears. But when it happened, of course, it's horrible and everything. I don't think back and think, and they're okay. And, we were able to backtrack and figure it out and whatnot. So it's like a learning process. And I don't look back and think someone said that it would be clear cut. And, I don't resent the time that I spent thinking that nothing would happen in any way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you just got to live it. Yeah, that's great. Right. So that took the seizure problem down quite a few notches.
It did. But obviously with Brynleigh, she did go on to be diagnosed with autism. They wanted to wait about a year or so after surgery to make that conclusion because we had to deal with the surgery part first and the recovery.
Yeah.
And it did really take a full year for her brain to kind of settle and rewire and renetwork.
Yeah.
So we went through that, and then we did we're in one of the research studies at Cincinnati Children's that is connected with all of that. And we did get an autism diagnosis for her. And she does have some general global delays and has a lot of sensory involvement that we've been working with them on. She is in preschool and she'll go to kindergarten next year, but we're trying to get all of her, she gets PT, OT, music therapy, speech therapy. She loves horseback therapy. That's been a wonderful blessing for her. So we're trying to find out for her what that transition to kindergarten will look like. If she can be in a class with an aide or if she will need to be in a special program. That's where we're sitting right now with that phase of
and that's right where you should be
journey.
Sitting. And, I think now, I don't know where you live, but even back when I was making that transition with the kids, it wasn't bad. It really wasn't. And I think one was in a life skills type program. And I remember not wanting her to be and really advocating strongly for her to be moved out of it. And they did move her out. So, I guess nothing's undoable. It was worth trying. We both thought, okay, well, we'll see how that goes.
Right.
So yeah, you can always change it.
Absolutely. But, so that's where things are with her now. We call it our medical vacation. We have to try to see the positive in that, right?
Oh, so absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Our medical vacation down to Ohio to go to the TSC clinic with Dr. Kruger. And this last year when we went, in addition to talking about some of the autism things and some of the sensory, she does a lot of stemming and different things that are really taking away from some of her abilities to be able to learn and to focus. So we're trying to figure that out. And we did find out that she has some cysts in her kidneys. So that was the last time we went. So we'll reevaluate everything again in August when we go. And we try to always tell her we go for those appointments and we get through all the hard part. And then we always say that we do little rewards, little things. Most kids, you can say, oh, if you do a good job, we'll go to a toy store and buy a toy. Brynleigh's not motivated by toys. A lot of our TSC kids have different motivators.
Oh, let me tell you. Oh my goodness. Yeah, she was just the weirdest things that she was obsessed with. But
like Chick-fil-A is a motivator for Brynleigh. She calls them chuggets, and we go get her chicken nuggets.
Whatever it takes.
What her big thing is, she loves rides. And so it's an expensive thing to ask for. We try to take her to amusement parks or get her on rides. She just loves
that's so funny.
Rides.
She likes the sensation. And
yes. And she's a daredevil. She'll go on anything in Disney, even the fast coasters.
Wow.
So
how cool.
So we try to do that, but that's where we kind of are with her right now in her journey.
Well, great job, Mom.
Thanks. You too.
Yeah, you're just it's nice to hear the younger moms that have learned from the stuff that has come out since, my kids are older. It's great. It's like everyone around my age or whatever wants to hear.
Yeah, but I think that there's so much, I love having the TSC mom friends that are in all phases of life, because I think there's so much for the new moms to learn from the old moms and the old moms from the new moms. Or I don't even like using that old moms because I don't like the age.
Yeah, you can. Believe me, it's fine. Call me old.
Yes.
I agree.
And I think that even from our daughter's diagnosis back in 2014 to now, to see these freshly, newly, like just in the last couple months diagnosed families, I can already see, my goodness, what has happened